Hello and welcome to Sips by the Well. I am your host, Janelle, and today I have a very special guest, Heather Smith. Heather, say hi.
Hi.
Heather has joined us today to tell a little bit about her testimony, and we're going to talk about I'm just going to let her tell you, and then we'll go ahead and I'll tell you what we're going to talk about because I don't want to blow it. So go ahead, Heather.
All right. Hi. I hope everyone's doing amazing. I'm so excited to be here on my Bestie Boo's channel. All right. So, where do we start? So, I guess I'll start whenever I was a teenager. I don't really have like a certain, like an age. It's like a guess for me to figure anywhere from age 14, 15 to 16, 17, 18. Not sure. I know that's a big difference, but I really just don't know. But in between those ages, I was introduced to meth. So meth became a very part of my life, a very significant part of my life. Like it was like every day at a very young age. Um, I became addicted to it. I would literally wake up to it. I felt like I couldn't really function too much because I don't know if you've ever done meth, but whenever you do, you're up for days and days. So that crash, that come down is brutal sometimes. And when you're recovering, you don't have no energy, you just blah, right? You just feel like a big old huge blah. And so in order to be able to function the next morning, I just had to do it again. I would get up, I would eat, and then it would be waiting for me when I got done eating. So that was a part of my life for a long time. I believe it was after I quit school because I quit school my 11th grade year, went back to be a senior, and then I quit 2 weeks into being a senior. I know, kind of stupid, right? But um, so it had to have been, I don't know, 17, 18, I guess. So I
But you
did
had already
those.
been doing it for a little while at that point.
Yes, by the time I quit school, I'd probably dabbled in it a little bit. The more like everyday thing came like after I quit.
Okay.
But I definitely became addicted to it. Um, whenever I was, let's see, I quit school. It wasn't long after that I found out I was pregnant with Haley, and no, I didn't do the drugs when I was pregnant with Haley. I did smoke weed at the beginning of it because I was extremely sick and it was hard for me to get out of bed. But eventually I did quit. So I had Haley I got pregnant when I was 19. I had her when I was 20. And so me and her, well, let me backtrack a little bit. Me and her dad met, I went to school with him. So that's how I met him. And then I ended up dating him. I think we were together for like 6 months and ended up pregnant with Haley. And so we weren't together whenever I told him I was pregnant. But whenever I actually had Haley, he started coming around a lot more. And that's kind of where our relationship took off. That's where we moved in together. That's where we started our life together. And it instantly became not what I thought it was. Um, it was abusive, extremely abusive, not just a little bit. Like I'm talking about like extremely abusive. I didn't really go around my family. I was embarrassed. I was afraid of what they would say when they seen me like that. Sometimes, most of the time, I didn't have any bruises on my face, but my body was bruised up and it was sore. Like you could touch it in some places and it would just hurt so bad. Like it would hurt to breathe sometimes. I don't know if you've ever been hit in the ribs, but that hurts.
Yeah.
Um, so I dealt with that for, gosh, we were together for 10 or 11 years and we were married about four of those. And so the abuse started whenever we moved in together when Haley was a baby. It just progressively got worse the more and more and more we were together. Whenever Haley was about 2, I had a miscarriage. Um, I truly, everything in me believes it was just due to the abuse. Um, 2 years after that, I got pregnant with my son. And my kids now are 23 and 19. And after I got pregnant with my son, we were together for a little bit longer, but then it just kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And I just felt like I was caged. Like I don't even know how to describe it sometimes. I felt like I wasn't good enough and I wasn't worthy enough, but deep down inside, I knew that this couldn't be it, right? Like this can't be it. But I didn't know how. I didn't have the strength. I didn't have the motivation, the determination, the self-worth to fight for anything. And so I was like, well, you know what? So we were running because the cops wanted him for some traffic ticket or something. I don't remember what it was. And we were running from the cops, and we ended up in Detroit with his family. And one of his cousins was going through the whole process to get into the military. And I was like, oh, well, that's it. That's my way out. I'm just going to go to the military. And so I started the process in Detroit. I came back to Texas and I finished that process in Cleveland. In my mind, that was my way out. But
And
I
how old
guess
were
that
your kids at this point?
so whenever I joined the military, Haley was 6 and Eric was 2.
Okay.
Yeah. So but instead of that getting me away from him, I married him. It's crazy. We did a we did a JP wedding. Somebody stood in for me, and I married him before I went to Iraq. He was in prison, and we were. It was crazy. But anyway,
The things
so I
we
married
do.
him. Yeah, right. I married him right before I went to basic training. So I go through basic training. I go through AIT. I get home from then, and he was allowed to come live with me. Now, like I didn't live on base because I had a whole family, so I could live outside the base. So he was allowed to come live with me, and so him and the kids come. I lived in Copper's Cove, which is not far from Fort Leonard Wood. Wow, Fort Hood, which is in Killeen, Texas, and it wasn't really, the abuse wasn't there. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was, but not like it was before the military. He was too worried about chasing the side chick that he had, too busy, to worry about his wife. And so something happened. I don't remember what it was. I think he got in trouble again. It was go or he did go to jail again. I had got put on to orders. So I got out of basic training, and I was no, I'm sorry. I got out of AIT. And AIT is basically in the military. After you get out of basic training, you go to this other location, and that's where they teach you how to do your job that you're going to do when you're in the military. So I go to Fort Leonard Wood, and I'm sorry, I get put on orders. So now it's time to go to Iraq. It's time to be deployed. I was terrified. Like I don't even know if I could ever find the words to describe the feeling that I felt in that moment, knowing that I was going to Iraq. It was very scary. And my husband ends up going to jail the night before I was supposed to leave to go to Iraq. Uh, my son was supposed to stay with him. My daughter was with her grandmother, which was his mom. And so I called my mom and my sister, and they came to clean, and they picked up Eric the night before I was going to Iraq. The next morning, my mom, my sister, and my son dropped me off at the gym on base and sent me on my way. That was one of the hardest things I'd ever had to do in my life. Not knowing, going there one way, going there a certain type of person, and then returning somebody completely different. That's where the PTSD, at that time, I didn't know that, but that's where the sleepless nights came. That's where the paranoia came. That's where I didn't know if I laid down to go to sleep for the night, if I was going to wake up the next morning. That's where I would literally, like I'm sitting right now on a computer. I'm on my bed right now, but I'm sitting here. And so I said that because that's literally what I would be doing in Iraq. I would be sitting here with my little laptop, I had little headphones on, and I don't know if they still do it like this, but Yahoo used to have to where you could have a phone number. So I had a phone number, and my kids would call me, and we would video chat on this video with my little headphones on. And there were so many times that they would start bombing us, mortars, whatever you want to call it, like just back to back. And I had no time to be like, "Hey, I gotta go. I love you." I had no time to tell them anything. The only time I had to do was to take the headphones off and just run. And there were times I remember coming back, and I would have like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of missed calls because I was in the headquarters. So I had to go to the main office of my unit and account for everybody that was in that unit. So I was always the last one that got to go back to my room and decompress, right? So I would have hundreds and hundreds of calls. A funny story, real quick. Whenever I was in Iraq, that's now this isn't the funny part. Whenever that man, I think he was a psychiatrist, and he killed all those people in Iraq. It was very, very sad and devastating for Fort Hood and a lot of people that knew those people. But my son, so it was about 2 or 3 months before we were getting ready to come home, and he says, "Mom," he was like, "I'm so ready for you to come home." He's like, let's see, 2009, he was 4. He's like, "Mom, I'm ready for you to come home. Like, just come home." I was like, "Baby, I still have like 2 or 3 months. Hopefully, mom will be able to come home soon." And I'm on the phone with him, and he says, "No." He says, "You tell them people I'm going to shoot them. They better send my mama home or I'm going to shoot them." And I was like, "No, you can't say that. Not right after this man done took these people's life. You can't do that, son. Like, what is wrong with my child?" And I told my first sergeant, he was like, "That is the cutest." He's like, "That baby is not playing. We better get you home, Smith."
Yeah.
Said, "Yes, because he is for real." So anyway, I was in Iraq. I met some amazing people. I trusted my life with some amazing people. When you go to war with people that you have to literally, not like in the street, like I got your back, like, you know what I mean, that like for real talk, like I got your back on a whole new level type thing.
Totally different.
I trust you with my life, literally. And that builds a whole bond that is just indescribable. Like I can't describe how one of my battle buddies, like what they mean to me. And for those of y'all that don't know, a battle buddy is somebody that you're in the military with, that you go to war with, and that's just what you call each other. I still talk to most of them. Some, well, I'm not going to say most of them because that was a lot of them, but we're still friends on Facebook. It's a bond that will, a family that will, they'll always be family. But it was hard. I had to deal with a lot of stuff, PTSD, um, my knees, my back, my ankles, my bones, my joints, all of those things. But it was an honor, for me to be able to sit here and say, and it still blows my mind sometimes. I had somebody shake my hand the other day because they seen my license plate had disabled veteran on it, and it still humbles me when people shake my hand and say thank you for your service, because it's it's so crazy to me still to this day. What's this, 2024? So 12 years after I got out of the military, it still blows my mind that I served in the military, that I went to Iraq. It's an honor that I will forever hold and cherish in my heart.
Amen.
Um, so in 2012, so as you know, I was married when I joined. We got divorced whenever I was in Iraq. I started my divorce. I told him, I was like, "I can't do this anymore. I'm not going to put up with your crap." Um, with me being in a situation to where I felt safe enough to stand up for myself. He wasn't right in front of my face. He couldn't stop
Yeah.
me. He couldn't do anything. Um, I could just be who I wanted to be. I could do what I wanted to do, and I didn't have to worry about him trying to stop me or hurt me to the point to where I just gave up.
Yeah.
So I started my divorce. It took 2 years to get the divorce, but thank God I got it in 2000. So when you're in the military, you have to have like it's called a family care plan. So that's basically letting the military know that if you have to go overseas or if you have to go into the field for a week or so, that you have people that can watch your children. Your children will be safe. So I had one of those. Well, in 2012, well, after I got my divorce, they're like, "Hey, you got to update your family care plan." I'm like, "Well, I don't have anybody to put on there." The guy that I was dating at the time, he couldn't leave the state. My family wasn't willing to go, so I had to get out, which was okay with me because I honestly, like, sometimes I think like, man, if I could have just did like the whole thing and like retired from it, would have been great. But God had other plans, right?
Amen.
So I got out in 2012. I was so excited, so excited. I was like, "I'm free." And so I moved to a very small town called Gilmer, Texas. And if y'all don't know where that's at, I mean, it's very, very small. It's up by Longview, Marshall. I don't know if y'all know where that's at either. Um, that's where my mom and my stepdad had lived. And so I don't even think I was there but a few days maybe. And there was like literally like my mom's house was here and like literally right around the corner was this store. So I went to the store and I met this guy and he was real nice and sweet and very welcoming, you know what I mean? I had no idea, right? And so he just became a friend of mine. He was honestly just my friend. Me and my sister had lived together, and when I first got out, I was so excited. I had this free time. I didn't have to get up at 5:30 in the morning. What? I didn't have to get up with the chickens and go work out until I wanted to pass out. Like I was excited. I was excited to be free. And then months passed, and I'm like, wait, I don't like this no more. I don't know what to do with myself.
You
Now,
missed
mind
the
you,
structure of it.
exactly. Now, like whenever I was in the military, whenever I got off at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the afternoon, as long as somebody didn't do something stupid and they locked us down, when I got out at 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon, I went home. I went home to my children and slept at home with my kids. So it was like I had a 9 to 5 job, except it was a little bit more extensive than that. Um, so, and now here I was with all this free time. And whenever I was in processing out of the military, in my mind, I'm like, well, how hard can it be to be a civilian again? I was a civilian for 27 years of my life. I was only in the military for 4.5. So I didn't think about it. But when I got out, it was just a whole new world for me. I didn't know what to do with myself. I'm like, what do I do? Like, nobody's telling me to get up and run, stand in line, be quiet, shut up, don't do that, do this. Like
Right.
it was hard for me to accept the fact that I had all this free time. And you're thinking, oh man, I did so much. I did do so much. But then it just became to where I was just like, now what? Now what? Excuse me. And not understanding what PTSD was, not even understanding what I was going through in my mind. Um, I turned back to drugs. I turned back to what I knew. The only thing I knew to water it down and to make those thoughts and those feelings go away, even if it was for a minute or for 2 or 3 days while I was doing it, at least it was for a minute that I didn't have to deal with those thoughts. I was having dreams that people were killing me in Iraq. I was having nightmares that people were chasing me, trying to blow me up. It was a lot. Um, and so I turned to the drugs. It's all I knew. And I did those like me and my sister would literally get in the car and we would drive to the store and get those little glass little pipe things. And we would literally go for a ride and or we would do it that way. Sometimes we'd snort it, just depend on how we felt that day, I guess. I don't know what determined which way we would do it. I couldn't tell you. Um, but we would go for rides. And that's what we would do. We'd come back to the house. Nobody knew. Nobody knew what was going on. But it got to the point to where I literally stayed in my room all day. Like I would take the drives to go do it, but I would come back and I would go straight to my room. I wouldn't deal with my children. I wouldn't deal with anybody really. And I remember my mom coming in and saying, Heather, you can't keep doing this. You can't keep laying here. You can't keep this. You can't keep that. I'm like, I know. I know that. I know that I need help, but I don't even know how to help myself right now. And bless her heart, she didn't know how to help me either. And so I just got tired of everybody telling me you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do this, you did like just felt like they were just in my ear, just nah, 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 nah. And I just couldn't do it anymore. The drugs and the nagging and the PTSD, something that I had no idea what it even was at that moment, had just taken control. And I was like, I can't take this anymore. I can't take it. I got to get out of here. So I went to this guy's house who was my friend, or at least I thought he was. And so
This is
backtrack.
the guy that you met at the store?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
He went from friend to drug dealer. So now he was like my drug dealer friend, right? So I went to his house. I was hanging out with him, and I guess I was just like, I don't want to go back over there. I'm not going back over there. I can't deal with all that. I was deep in that meth. I really was, in such a short period of time, and I truly think it was just all the thoughts and the dreams and the things that I didn't know how to deal with, and nobody knew how to help me because they'd never been through anything that I'd been through, or
Yeah.
not this part of it, right? Couldn't nobody in my house or my family tell me how to deal with just getting out of the military because they'd never experienced that before. And so he then started talking to me about helping me get on my feet, and me and my kids weren't ever going to have to want anything again. Like, our lives were going to be great. Just trust him and do what he says. Da, 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 da. And I'm like, what are you even talking about? And he had talked it up like I was going to go on a date with a guy. Like, a guy just wanted a pretty lady to take to these business meetings, to these fancy little parties, and that's all it was. I was like, okay, I can go on a date with somebody. Free food, cool, nice dress. I'm good with that. And so the first one I went the first so okay, so he put me on this website. It's called Backpage. I don't even know if it's around anymore. I heard
Yeah, it
it
was on
was still
Craigslist.
around. I heard it was taken down, so who really knows? But he put me on this back page. He said he's got to take some pictures of me. They weren't like, provocative. I mean, I had lingerie on, but they weren't like nude or nothing like that. And he's like, put these on so men can just say, oh, I want her to be my pretty lady. So I'm like, whatever, dude. And I went on. So basically, they would see my picture and they'd be like, okay, well, I'm going to call her. So they would call me and I would ask them questions. And mind you, I'm still thinking I'm just going to go on a date with somebody. So the first time I went on a call, uh, I literally just sat there and talked until I couldn't talk. Because eventually I was like, oh, wait a minute. I don't, I don't think this is just. We don't look like we're going to a fancy ball. We don't look like we're going to a fancy meeting. Like, what's really going on here? And so I just talked. I talked my way out of it. I talked my way out of having to sleep with somebody, and I did that as much and as often as I possibly could. Because yes, I was on the drugs. I still wasn't fully aware of what was really happening right now, and I was just lost, lost. Um, I had so much going on in my mind that even the toxic, horrible, manipulative situation that I was in seemed not so bad as long as I didn't have to be by myself. And so I just talked my way out of it. 30 minutes, an hour. I just sit there and talk and talk and talk. And I'm like, oh, timer went off. Got to go. And I would leave. And then it came to the point to where I just couldn't. People wouldn't let me. They wouldn't let me talk myself out of it. And so, break it down to you for those of you that don't really understand what I'm talking about right now. The guy was forcing me to go on these calls with men to have sex with them. He had forced me into prostitution. And whenever it snapped and I realized, like, wait, hold on. It was like a whole glimpse of reality set in. And I'm like, wait, this is not okay. Like, this is nowhere near okay. Like, this is degrading and demeaning, and it was horrible. And I told him, I was like, dude, I can't do this. Like, this is crazy. Like, I don't know what you thought. I was like, but thank God that some glimpse of reality came in my mind. I know it had to be nobody but the Holy Spirit. I just didn't know it at that time. But something snapped over me and I was just like, wait, no, no, this is not okay. Like, no, this is not okay. And he was like, okay, you know what? Let's go to California. Let's go on a vacation. I was like, cool, I've never been to California. And he was like, all right, let's go. So we were supposed to go for 2 weeks. And when we got there, it was
So let
cool.
me ask you this. So at this time, is he acting like he's your boyfriend?
So he would love for people to say that, I don't remember the name he called it. Sometimes he would introduce me as his boyfriend. Sometimes I was just Heather and he was just who he was, right?
Okay.
Um, but he didn't like to be called pimp. He didn't like to be called that, but that's what he
Well,
was.
I just was wondering because you said you guys were gonna go on a vacation, so I'm thinking like,
Well, he did. He so the money that I would give him from sleeping with these men, and I'm telling you, like, it just depend on how many men. But there was some nights I'm making $1,000 to $1,500 a day for about 2 or 3 days consecutively, maybe even more than that.
okay,
Um, and I would give him this money. So he would take some of this money and he would buy me nice Michael. Like, I had nice stuff. I had nice clothes. I had Michael Kors purses, wallets, shoes, belts, jack, like everything. He bought me nice stuff and he wined and dined me on the money that I made him by
right,
sleeping with
okay.
men. You know what I'm saying? And like in that addiction and in those drugs, like there were moments, I can't sit here and tell you that every single moment that I was with him was horrible and pitiful. Outside of sleeping with a man, that was just ridiculous. But like I was wined, I was dined, I was treated, I was put on
With
a
your own
pedestal.
money.
Yeah. I was put on a pedestal, like literally. Um he put me above baby mama. Like it was just crazy. It was crazy, the pedestal that he put me on. So in moments I felt like a princess because I was deceived,
Yeah.
right? Um so he takes me to California. This is our vacation, right? He takes me to California and we're up there and it was cool. It was very relaxing. And then he puts me in the strip club where his sister was. And backtrack, I started in a strip club, but it was a bikini bar in Texas and I wasn't making no money. So he pulled me out of that. And that's when he stuck me in the trafficking or the prostitution thing. So when we get to California, he puts me in a new strip club in San Francisco. And mind you, I mean, the little bit of dancing I did at the bikini bar was like whatever. It was just like I was in a bikini at the beach or something or at a party. Like it wasn't that big of a deal to me in my mind. But when we got to California and you want me to take all my clothes off? You want me to take all my clothes off and dance for these men? What? No, I'm not gonna be able to do that. Well, I did it. Because it was just like, no, he didn't. There were times he would beat me up. Now he didn't beat me up every day, but if it was something that he wanted me to do that I didn't want to do, I'd get slapped across the head. There was one time he did hit me about 4 or 5 times at one time, but most of the time it was just like a smack, a slap, or whatever. Not saying that that is okay, but just that the abuse wasn't the problem. It wasn't the main problem, I guess. Um, so he he was like, "Yes, you're gonna do it." So I danced in the strip club in Houston. I mean, I'm sorry, in California. And he got to where, okay, well that's not making quite enough. So let's, instead of you dancing for these men in the club, let's you tell them what else they can get if they let you go to the hotel, or if they you go to their hotel or their apartment or their whatever. And so then the girls didn't like that. They already didn't like me because I was from Texas. And all the guys liked the little country bumpkin from Texas, right? But they didn't like that. So I was not their favorite at all. I was probably their least favorite. So I was just like, whatever. I don't even need to go back in that club because I'm gonna end up getting jumped one day. So I don't want to go back in there. So anyway, he had me prostituting in California.
And how long
So
did that go on for?
about 4 months. I believe I was there for about 4 months. So I called my dad one day and I was telling him, he was asking me how I'm doing. I was like, I'm doing okay, I guess. And I was like, Daddy, I really need to get out of here. And he was like, what do you mean? I was like, well, there's just things going on that I really just don't agree with. I'm being forced to do things that I just really don't want to do. And I need out of here. He's like, where you at? I was like, California. I think I told him California. I don't even remember if I had to have told him California because he bought the ticket. So anyway, I told him where I was and he buys me a ticket. He was like, here, I bought you a plane ticket. Just come home. I'm like, okay, great. So the day I'm supposed to fly, actually, I take that back. The day before. The day before I was supposed to fly, I go on a call. And I'm in this guy's apartment. And the trafficker would literally time me. So it was 30 minutes or an hour or more. No less than 30 minutes, right? 30 minutes or more. So he would time me. If it was 30 minutes, I better be out of there in 30 minutes. If it was an hour, I better be out of there in an hour. If they wanted more time, I better call him and tell him before that time's up, or I'm going to have to. And then I better show him that they gave me more money. And so I did. I think it was like, I don't know, between 1 to 3 minutes at late after that 30 minute, because I was trying to find my stuff. And so I walked down, and as soon as I got to the car, he starts hitting me. Well, I don't know who it was. Somebody calls the cops. And when the cops get there, I lied to them. I'm like, I don't know if jail is worse or if he's worse, but I'll take my chances with him because I don't want to go to jail. Not in San
Well, and
Francisco.
you're on drugs and you don't want to not do drugs. And like there's all a
Exactly.
whole,
All of the above. I can
yeah.
drink. I can do drugs. Like he might have knocked me upside my head a few times, but hell, I dealt with that for 11, 12, 13 years. It's not that bad. That's the mentality, right? And so I was like, no, it's fine. Everything's okay. So the next day, which is the day that I was supposed to fly, he knew that I was set I didn't want him to touch me. I was like, get off me. He was like, well, come on, I'm going to take you somewhere. He was trying to wine and dine me, right? Took me to my favorite restaurant, bought me my favorite drink, bought me a wallet, like all this other kind of stuff. And so I missed my flight. And I was like, well, dang, what am I going to do now? Like, my dad spent that money. I got to get out of here. Like, it's not even just about him spending that money. Like, I got to get out of here. And we get back that night from going out to dinner and all these different things. And he was like, hey, Heather, will you go to the store and get something to drink? And we had this little rental that we had gotten. And so I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, what can I grab right now? And he was like, are you going to go? And I was like, okay. So I just grabbed my purse and my wallet and my phone and the keys, of course, to the car. And I get in the car and I Googled how to get to the airport in San Francisco. And I just drove as fast as I possibly could because I was on his phone plan. So he was eventually going to know where I was eventually if I didn't come back. So I drove as fast as I could to the airport. I didn't want to get in trouble for stealing the rental car. So I just stuck the keys under the floor mat and ran into the airport. And I found the first security guard and I was like, hey, please help me. I kind of told him a little bit. I didn't tell him that I was being trafficked. I just told him that I didn't live in California and somebody was forcing me to do things that I didn't want to do. And I just wanted to go home. So they took me to the back and they asked me a bunch of questions. And I told them, I was like, he's going to find me. They're like, no, ma'am, he's not going to find you. I was like, no, yes, he is. Like, you don't understand. Like, I'm on his phone plan. He will find me. And it wasn't, I don't know how long after I got there, he showed up. And he was trying to get back there to me and they wouldn't let him. Finally, they, put me on a plane ticket or they gave me another plane ticket. Thank God. Because my time had already passed. I didn't miss my flight hours and hours and hours before that. And they wouldn't let him fly. They wouldn't even let him fly at all that day.
So
So
that
once
you
I
could
get
get
past
away.
security, yeah, they're like, no, he can't fly at all today. And once I got past security and got in the back row waiting for the flight, his sister and whoever kept calling me like, you just flipped out. No, I'm not doing this with y'all. Like, they stole my ID. Like, it was just crazy ridiculous. Like, I didn't even have an ID. So I know that wasn't nobody but God that got me home in an airport with
Yeah.
no ID. Like, come on. So I made it back to Texas, thank God. Um, a few months later, I ended up right back with him. He had my car. I think it was he had my car, and I had to go get my car or something like that. I don't remember how, but somehow I ended up back with him. And it was probably the drugs, the money. You know what I'm saying? The freedom to do whatever, even though it was such a toxic and horrible situation. In my mind, he cared for me. You know what I mean? Like, in my mind, he cared for me. In my mind, he loved me. In my mind, I was his best girl, right? Just all the things that the enemy in ourselves, because we're in such a horrible mindset that we don't even understand the toxicity that we're thinking and living in is affecting our life on a whole new level. And that's what it did. So anyway, I ended up back with him. There was one night a call had came through and I told him, I was like, I don't want to go on this call. I don't agree with this. I don't want to go with this. There's something fishy about it. Please don't make me go on this call. And he was so greedy and money hungry, he didn't care. He didn't care if I had a bad feeling about it or not. I'm like, dude, you didn't even talk to these people. How do you know what they said? So he makes me get out and go into this hotel room in Bossier City, Louisiana. And I literally walked in the door, said a few things to the guy. The guy's going in the bathroom. He comes back, literally takes all of his clothes off, lays on the bed, and I'm sitting actually, I'm kind of behind the door, and I'm just taking off my shoes. And he was like, well, are you going to take your clothes off? I was like, I don't know, but right now I'm just going to take my shoes off. And literally, I got one shoe off. I was taking the other shoe off, and they bust through the door and arrest me. And I'm telling them, I'm like, wait, no, it's not what you think it is. I'm trying to tell them, hey, this dude is forcing me into doing this. If I don't do this, I'm going to get hurt. But all that cop told me to do was shut up and sit down. I don't care what you got to say. Shut up and sit down. So I shut up and sat down. And I spent a week and a half in jail. No, I'm sorry. I spent a week in jail. I pretty much stayed in my room, ate my food. I didn't shower the whole week. I was just like, I got to get out of here, dude. Like, I can't do this. Um, so there, I finally found a bondsman that was willing to, like, come get me, but let me, like, basically off my word, saying, I promise you, I'm going to give you this money. Just get me out, and I'll get somebody to send it to you. So he did that. So he gets me out. Um, He gets me a room because it was so late at night. He buys the stuff I need to be able to shower and do all this stuff because I hadn't done it in a week. Um, so I'm thinking he left out of my room because he either left, I don't know. But anyway, I get out of the shower and this man is in my room and he says, "You're going to do sexual favors for me. I'm going to take you back to jail." I'm like, "What? The bondsman that's supposed to help me? That's supposed to help
Whoa.
me get out of this state because somebody just trafficked me and now you are doing something that's similar? You're telling me if I don't do oral sex, you're going to take me back to jail?" I wasn't going back to jail. I wasn't going back to jail. I was going to Texas. Somehow, some way, I was going to Texas at any and all cost. And so the next morning, my friend sent me the money, and I got on a bus ticket to Texas, and I went to Texas, and that was the last time I seen him. I don't know. I don't. I wish I could tell y'all like a timeline for like how long it happened, but I don't have that. I just know that I got out of the army in 2012 in March. I know that it was probably almost instantaneously after I got out, maybe April, May, and that's probably might be pushing it. No, I take that back. It might have been a little bit longer than that because I did drugs for a few months before all that happened. So I know that it more than likely started in 2012, but I don't know if it ended in 2012 or if it went into 2013. But I know that that was the last time I seen him. For many, many years after that, he would try to message me on Messenger every now and then. Happy birthday. You know, we're supposed to be millionaires by now. Oh, you mean forcing me to sell my body? No, thank you. Um, so I finally blocked him. Every time he would do it, I'd block him, I'd block him, I'd block him. And he quit messaging me. Thank God. Um, for the longest time, I didn't know what had happened to me. I wasn't sure what that was. I just knew that it sucked really bad. Um, until I read a book by Christine Kane. And if y'all don't know who Christine Kane is, she is an amazing speaker, author, Christian woman of God that has an organization called A21. And it is an organization that combats sex trafficking. And she has several books, devotionals, different things like that. So I was reading one of her books and she was describing what human trafficking was. And when I read it, I just sat there with my mouth open, just like, what?
So tell us,
Just-
what is human trafficking, Heather?
So, human trafficking is any form of forcing someone to have sex, to work, to do anything like that. Like, any exchange of money for someone, okay, I'm trying to say how to say this to where people just like layman terms. Anytime someone forces someone to have sex,
Any type of sexual acts.
yes, any type of sexual act, that's sex trafficking. Anytime if you have a boyfriend and your boyfriend is making you go sleep with Tom, Dick, and Harry over here because he wants money to go do this, that's sex trafficking. Anytime your family makes you go sleep with somebody else, some of their friends or whoever it is because they need drugs or they need money, that's sex trafficking. Any two which ways. Now there's also other forms of trafficking. There is I don't know what they call it, like work trafficking, where they basically make people work for a little of nothing or don't pay them at all, but they're forced to work in these horrible, horrific situations.
Conditions. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, sex trafficking is making somebody think that you're going to make every dream that they ever had possibly come true. But in the back of your mind, you know that all you're doing is grooming them to traffic them because they're very smart. Traffickers are very smart. They're not dummies. They're smart. They know. It's like I feel like they got this, I don't even know how to say it. Like it's like they can see the unworthy sign. They can see the vulnerable sign. They can see the signs that we have across our heads sometimes as women that have been used and abused, that are busted, disgusted, and broken, right? It's like we have those signs on our head because they're good at finding those people. They're good at finding the ones that are vulnerable, that have been through things, the ones that have been used and abused as a child, as a teenager, as a woman, just in general. um
So
they're
you
good.
would say somebody that obviously isn't aware of their value, somebody that has maybe been in an abusive situation, somebody that seems naive.
Hmm.
Those are people that are at risk for it.
Yes, but I will say that that's not just those are the easy ones I feel like for them.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if that's the right word for it, but I just know that whenever you're vulnerable and you're naive and you're gullible because of the things that you've been through, so the nice, flashy, all that stuff looks good and it sounds good, and
Hmm.
you're more likely to believe it.
Yeah.
So maybe those are the easy ones for them, but I know that I don't feel like anybody's exempt from it, especially not these days,
Oh yeah. No.
because like they could, I mean, if they, I'm pretty sure if they just see some woman walking, like they don't have to know nothing about this woman. They're going to just take her and force her. You know what I mean? Just like they do teenagers and children.
Right, but with your situation, it was more of a grooming situation, and he
Oh,
worked
definitely
up
was. It
to it. So
it definitely was. He made me think he was my friend. He made me think that he was going to help me and my children get on our feet. Um, and the whole time he was just earning my trust, getting me to trust him. That was it. The whole time, his intention, the whole entire time, was to traffic me because he'd done it previously before me. I
he had
didn't know
other
that
women that he had done
until,
that to.
yeah, I didn't know that until later.
So
His
tell me a couple of telltale signs that somebody is being trafficked, maybe that you would notice if you saw somebody.
Okay, now these aren't they're being trafficked every time this happens. It's just, if
Some
you
of
get this eerie type feeling about it, especially if you are a woman of God, a man of God, a child of God, and you have the Holy Spirit, that teacher, you know what I'm saying, that corrector that lives inside of us. If you see something and you have that eerie feeling about it too, then it could very well be, but that doesn't mean that that's always what's happening. Um, so if you see especially an older man with the young woman and you're like, oh, come on, Heather, that's normal these days. It is. However, if you see an older man and a younger woman, or a younger woman and an older man, whatever, um if you see those two, if they're like agreed to be in this relationship, they're going to be happy and flirty or lovey and those types of things, right? But if you got an older man and a younger woman, or vice versa, and this other person is like looking down at the ground, they won't look at you. When you ask them a question, like at a restaurant or in public or something, you ask them a question, they're going to have their head down. Most of the
okay.
time, they're not going to look at you. They're not going to give you eye contact because they're terrified. When you ask them questions, most of the time, they probably won't even answer. Or if they do, it'll be like, it won't even like really truly answer your question. Like he or whoever it is got to finish it for them. If they don't have their own ID, a lot of times the traffickers don't give them their own identification because then that gives them a way or an escape
Out.
route. Because if you got your ID, you can go anywhere, right? Um, let's see. If you see a woman dressed really, really provocative with this older man at a hotel, or any type of man at a hotel, she disappears for a while. The man's outside, all of a sudden the woman comes back down. More than likely, she's being trafficked, or
So
she
if
might.
you see somebody being trafficked, what should you do? Or you
Well, first of
suspect?
all,
Not necessarily you know for sure, but if you suspect it.
right. Well, first of all, don't get involved. Um, unless you know for certain that you can take this person down, and you yourself or the person that's already in danger is not going to get hurt. Because if you try to take somebody down and you don't, that person, that girl, that man, that woman, whoever it is that's being trafficked, is going to get 10 times worse than what you thought you were about to do. But if you do think that someone is being trafficked, there is a number. It's a human trafficking hotline number. The number is 1-888-373-7888. You can call that number and tell them, or call 911, call your local place and tell them, and get them to send somebody out there to check on that person. Maybe get the license plate number, get a picture, do something like that secretively so that they don't know what you're doing, because you don't want to lose your
Right.
life trying to help somebody else. I get it. Some people are willing to do that, but you're not helping anybody if you lose your life in the process. Your
Yeah.
family just lost you, and that person is not getting any help. So call 911, call the police. Do not try to intervene unless it's like a child and you can just scoop them up and run past on the way by, like safely. By all means, do it. I'm all about it. Because with me going through it, I probably wouldn't care about what danger I was in. I'm not telling you to do that, but I'm just saying from me myself, if I knew it, I probably wouldn't care because I've been there and I know what it's like. Um, but don't put yourself in risk. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Well, I hope that this has helped somebody. I know that for myself, before I met Heather, I had this crazy idea that sex trafficking was only like little kids in the back of a, kind of like the movies that we had seen,
Hmm.
the Sound of Freedom, like kids in a shipping container and things. And not saying that that is as well, but I
Right.
didn't realize it could be grown adults. It could be,
Hmm.
um, maybe even a boyfriend that was making you do it, a family member, things like that. I had a very, I'm very misconception of what it was. So after I was able to hear Heather's story and she, really shed light onto it, because even herself, it happened to her and she didn't even know until
Hmm.
somebody told her. So that's the reason that we wanted to do this, to just kind of bring awareness to, unfortunately, how common it is, especially nowadays with the internet and the things that make it so readily available. And
Right.
for women that are vulnerable, or even men. I mean, I know that there's men that could be out there being trafficked, you know what I mean? Like, just as a vulnerable person, if you don't know who you are, if you've been hurt, if you've had abuse in your past, and like Heather said, somebody that hadn't been abused previously probably wouldn't have put up with the abuse the guy was giving her, but it was kind of just normal to her. Her brain had already been abused by that and had already been manipulated in that way. And at least this guy was buying her presents and things, So
Hmm.
you just never really know. You don't never really know. And you don't know where just one bad decision can take you. Thank
Yeah.
God you made it back from that, Heather, and that,
Amen. Amen.
that you were
I just
smart
want
enough to get in the car and take off.
right, right. Yeah. No, I just want to say a few things like if you yourself are being trafficked, maybe you don't know for sure, but you feel like you are. Maybe something I said resonated with you and you're like, oh my gosh, that's what's happening to me right now. Dial that number, okay? Wait until you're in the bathroom or in a secretive place to where nobody knows what you're doing and call that number. Okay? It's 1-888 1-888-373-7888. Call that number. They can find you. They will help you. There is a way out. Myself, among many other survivor sisters of mine, have got out. Hang in there. Hold on to your faith and just know that God's got you. He's sending someone. I can't imagine what you're going through right now, but just know that you're loved and God loves you. And what's being done to you right now is not okay. And I
It's not
pray
your
that,
fault.
yeah, I pray that you are out as soon as possible. And if you also, I want to say that be careful. Be careful when you're talking to people online. Be careful to being so trusting to people because it could really end up putting you in a very horrible situation. Um, People that are trying to tell you that they have all this money you can make taking pictures, people trying to tell you that they can make all your dreams come true, people trying to tell you that come over here and oh that's taking pictures, come over here and take these pictures and we're going to sell them and you're going to make all this money, or um, a guy that says he's interested in you but his questions are weird and real sexual and really doesn't make no sense and it's more about money and sex than it is about really getting to know who you are. These are all signs and stuff that you need to look for. Don't believe that mess that you hear from somebody online that can tell you they can make all your dreams come true, because it's not worth that risk. I'm not saying that that's what they're trying to do. However, it's not worth the risk
Yeah.
because
Be
you could end
mindful
up
of
on
that.
the other side of the country somewhere in a hidden shipping container going across the sea to a whole nother country that you don't even know where you're at. Nobody will ever be able to find you, or at least if they will, it'll take forever. So
Yeah.
please be careful. Don't be so vulnerable to these men. It ain't worth it.
Mm-mm.
Having a man is not worth it, or having a girl. Because as Janelle
Anything.
said, anybody can be trafficked. A child, a girl, a woman, a man, a boy. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They don't discriminate. They will take any and everybody that they possibly can because it's all about money to them. All about money. If you're someone that has been trafficked, but you're out of the lifestyle and you really need someone to talk to because you don't know how to overcome that, you don't know how to deal with those feelings and emotions, please reach out to me. Comment on this post or on her Facebook page, and she will let me know if I don't see it myself, and I will reach out to you. I'll be
And
more
she's
than happy
also
to talk
Heather
to you.
Smith on Facebook.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Heather, for joining us and for sharing and being brave and being vulnerable. I know it's not easy to tell people your mess, but I
Yeah.
know that there's going to be somebody out there that it's going to help. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like, subscribe, share, all of those good things. And if you'd like to be a guest, please comment below, and I would love to give you that opportunity. Thank you again
Yes.
for joining us. I hope you tune in next week. Bye.